in Islam. So the word that's mentioned here, yuldagh, when you look at it from a lughawi standpoint, the scholars, the muhaddithin, they mention that this particular word, it has to do with the aspect of being stung or bitten by any type of creature which not only do you get stung by it or bitten by it, like for example, we go outside nowadays in the humidity when it's raining and you get bit by mosquitoes, right? But that's one thing. When you get bit by a mosquito, yes, you may get a mark and it itches and whatnot. But when you get bitten by a creature which is poisonous or venomous, not only does it sting and does it hurt, but it has consequences as well. Unless you go straight to the hospital and they give you some medication or whatever it may be, it can poison you, and the venom of certain snakes can kill people within minutes even. So yuldagh means to be bitten by a venomous type of creature, a poisonous type of creature. And then juhr is the hole that these animals dig for their burrows. So do not be bit from the same hole twice. And this is kind of like, it's telling us to be very precautious as a believer. There are times that we may get deceived once by someone, or we are deceived in some way with some mistake or whatever it may be. And it happens. We all make mistakes. We all make errors as human beings. But once it happens one time, now we have to be precautious. Now we have to know that, okay, my lesson has been learned once, so I'm not going to let this happen again. And there's a famous saying in English that also is very similar. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Right? So you're basically saying, yeah, fool me once, shame on you. A person has deceived the other. You're calling that person the deceiver. So shame on you for doing something like that, for tricking or deceiving or whatever it may be. Now fool me twice, shame on me. Yes, you still did the deception, but the person fell for it a second time. Now they become a fool because of that. So the background of this narration, the Prophet ﷺ, in the time of Badr, there was a particular poet, and this is what the muhaddithin mentioned. The poet's name was Abu Azza, and he was an enemy of Islam. So he was one who was not only a poet, but he would use his poetry to, plot against the Muslims. Poetry, of course, was a very common thing in those days to boast about your pride and, in wartime and things like that, to boost the morale of the armies. So he would plot and plan against the Muslims, and he fought against the Muslims in Badr. So the Muslims caught him as a prisoner. And when he was caught as a prisoner, he pleaded to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Rasulullah, free me. I'm poor, my family needs me, etc., etc. And he promised not to plot against the believers or fight against the Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ is very merciful. He lets him go. But then before you know it, at the time of Uhud, the same person shows up again, and he's fighting with the enemies. He's fighting with the enemies. And now the Muslims catch him a second time. And they catch him the second time. He says the same thing, Ya Rasulullah. He said, let me go. I promise you this time I definitely won't do it. And the Prophet ﷺ, this is when he said these words, that a believer will not be stung twice, from the same hole. And this time, since he was plotting against the believers and against Islam, and he was already caught once, he was ordered to be executed for his crime. Because he already let him go mercifully one time. He did not learn his lesson. He ended up plotting and fighting against the Muslims again. So he was ordered with execution the second time. So this was what the Prophet ﷺ said at that particular time. So it's a lesson for us as well. That yes, we fall into mistakes, we fall into errors. But when we fall into mistakes and errors, what do? We make tawbah, we make istighfar, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And when we ask Allah for forgiveness, part of our tawbah, part of our istighfar should also be that, Ya Allah, give me the ability to not fall into this again. And there are times that yes, out of our own weaknesses, out of our own nafs, we may fall into the same sin again, and we ask Allah for forgiveness. But when it comes to someone else tricking us and someone else doing this to us or that to us, we should always be precautious about that and not fall into these same types of traps. Which is why, again, as we had mentioned in previous ahadith and earlier sessions, that we must choose our company wisely. We must choose the company that remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we do not fall into these same traps, and we do not fall into these traps of deception and gharar, as the Prophet ﷺ is warning us about. So let us, inshallah, choose our company wisely. And whenever we do slip up, let us learn our lessons from those slip ups, and let us use those moments as a teaching moment so that we come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us on the right path, on the path of al-birr wa taqwa. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our sins, our mistakes, and our shortcomings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from all harms and all evils and all fitan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless each and every one of us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once again, all of our brothers and sisters who are going through difficulty, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them relief. And those who are sick, those who are ill, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them speedy shifa and sabrun jameel during this time. Ameen. Subhanahu wa ta'ala.